Hello, once again, I'm Pastor Truman. Thank you for joining us in our video supplement of Life's Greatest Quest as we look at the Gospel of John. Now, today you can turn to chapter 2, verse 42, and you'll find we're picking up and giving an illustration that's not in your book. You can find this on TrumanHearingMinistries.com. And so our second point of John 4:10 is after we know that salvation is God's gift, we must have a basic understanding of who Jesus is. Jesus is our Savior, sacrifice, and substitute. Today we look at chapter 2, page 42, and we're going to give an illustration about Jesus being our substitute. Now, what is a substitute? A substitute is one who takes the place of another. In sports, you see this all the time. A key athlete gets hurt, and when he's hurt, the coach sends in a substitute, someone to take his place in the game. Well, Jesus is our substitute. He did for us what we could not do for ourselves. We could not defeat Satan. Jesus defeated Satan. Tempted by Satan and never sinned. We could not keep the law. Jesus is our substitute. He's the only one who obeyed the law of God perfectly. We could not satisfy the justice of God against our sin. Jesus, as our substitute, took our place. He took the punishment of our sin, the wage of our sin, the wrath of God against our sin on the cross. And we certainly could not conquer death. But Jesus, the third day, arose. He's our substitute in resurrection life. And now I want to give an illustration that I used in children's church probably about 40 years ago. Now I might not remember all the details, but you kind of get the idea of substitution. And the children understood this idea of substitution. And in personal evangelism often, I've used this illustration to help open the understanding of what it means for Jesus to become our substitute. In early American history, there were many one-room schoolhouses. And in this particular rural area, there was a one-room schoolhouse in which several teachers had quit. There was a group of rowdy boys who their desire was to run the teacher off. It was headed by a big boy named Big Billy. Well, a new teacher was coming to the school, but this man was a Christian, and he had prayed about coming to this school. He was asking God to give him wisdom and direction to be able to make an impact on the life of these young children. In a one-room school, it included the smallest and youngest children all the way up to the older boys and girls. The youngest was a little boy we'll call Little Johnny. Well, as the school teacher began, Billy began to say to his buddies, I bet we can run him off in just a couple of months. Well, this teacher was different. He went to the blackboard and he said to the students, today we're going to make rules for the class. And I want you to help me make the rules. And so I'm going to write on the blackboard the rules that we'll have for our school class. Someone said, I know one rule, no cheating. And so the teacher wrote, no cheating. Another said, no stealing. And he wrote, no stealing. Another one said, no swearing. And he wrote, no swearing. And rule by rule, the teacher wrote on the board. But then the teacher said, now rules have to have a punishment. There's no value if there's no consequences to breaking the rules. So I want you to give a penalty for breaking each of these. And one by one, they suggested a penalty. Well, for no homework, they said 1 lick. But then for no stealing, they assigned 4 licks from the teacher if someone was found stealing. Well, a few days went by and little Johnny came from a poor family. Sometimes he didn't have breakfast. And sometimes he did not bring a lunch to school. On this particular day, he had no breakfast. He was hungry. And so as the kids were outside playing, little Johnny snuck into the schoolhouse. And there he found a sandwich that he ate. But it was out of Big Billy's sack lunch. And so when the students came back inside, and it was time for them to enjoy their lunch, Big Billy protested to the teacher, "Teacher, someone has stolen my lunch." And so the teacher now took this opportunity to bring about a lesson. He said, "Now, is that one of our rules that we cannot break?" They said, "Yes, no stealing. And there's a penalty, 4 licks." And so the teacher began to say, someone needs to be honest enough to confess their sin and confess that they stole Big Billy's lunch. Well, little Johnny came forward crying. He said, "Teacher, I'm the one that stole Billy's lunch. I was so hungry though. I had nothing to eat." Well, Billy, though he's been rough with many, many people, he found himself having mercy and compassion on little Johnny. And so he said to the teacher, "Teacher, it was my lunch, so I forgive little Johnny." And the teacher said, "Well, that's good that you want to forgive little Johnny. But still, we have a rule. And a rule has been broken, and there must be a punishment." And so the teacher said, Johnny will still have to receive the 4 licks. And Billy said, "There must be another way. Is there any other way that Johnny does not have to receive the licks, the punishment for stealing?" And the teacher says, "There is one way." "Well, what is that way?" He said, "Billy, if you're willing to take the licks for Johnny, to be a substitute, to take little Johnny's place, then I will not have to give Johnny the licks." And so Billy went to the front of the class, and he bent over, and he allowed the teacher to give him the 4 licks. Well, little Johnny was moved with compassion for Billy, and he hugged Big Billy, and he said, "Oh, Billy, I love you so much. Thank you for taking my place." Well, Jesus is our substitute. And God cannot simply forgive us by saying, "You're forgiven." Somebody has broken the law of God, all of us. And the penalty of sin is death. Somebody has to die for our sin. But the good news is this: Jesus, though sinless, was willing to come and go to the cross and take our punishment upon himself. Jesus is our substitute. Thank you, my friends.